Welcome. My name is Al Meadows. I own Southwest Custom Cycles. I've been in the industry for 30 years of motorcycles and custom race bikes, car shows, motorcycle shows, magazines, calendars, all four major brand Japanese builders, and V-Twin Customs. What we're attempting to do in this video is take you in your garage, hand by hand, to build and step through a custom motorcycle of your own. Throughout this series, you'll see hands-on assemblies, ways to assemble, different techniques, how to stay out of trouble on putting a V-Twin motorcycle together. So the first thing you're going to need some basic tools, and let's move into that from there. Okay, here we go. We're ready to start on our custom motorcycle. And a few things real quick to that is, obviously in your garage, you don't have a motorcycle stand. You may or may not have a motorcycle stand. If you don't have a stand, I recommend that you build one out of wood, 36 inches high, or take a workbench that you can put in the middle of the floor and set up to build your custom motorcycle. You're going to need a lot of floor space and bench space to unpack your parts and lay them out and install them to the bike. So once you get your stand, you've got to have your basic toolkit. This is a cart that I work out of 100% in order to build a custom motorcycle. Now on this cart, these are basic tools. There's no special tools involved in coming in. The only special tools that you need, I will advise you to go down to the local motorcycle shop or have a service technician install that particular part for you so you can install it on your motorcycle. But first of all, we've got a plastic hammer and a hammer with a plastic head and a hard head. We've got a basic set of wrenches from 3/8 to 3/4, which are snap-on tools. They work great with chrome products. From there, we have a basic set of screwdrivers, crosshead and flathead screwdrivers. Inside the cart are medium size swivel head 3/8 drive ratchet, small swivel head. I like the swivel heads to get into the tight spots. And then a long 3/8 drive swivel head. Two extensions are the only two extensions I'll have. I believe that's a 2.5 inch and a 6 inch. That's all we need. They actually have a swivel end, so I can get a little bit of an angle if I need it to get square on the head. Aluminum drift for knocking parts in. Torque wrench, foot-pounds, very important in construction of these chrome custom bolts and nuts. A basic crescent wrench, 8 inch. I'll use it to back up things when I get in a spot real quick. Basic pliers, side cutters, short needle nose, and sockets. Now the sockets, I have a wide selection of Allen sockets here. I have a full set of Torx sockets. I have a medium set of 3/8 drive 6-point sockets. My Allen sockets that are frequently used are 3/8 drive standard length socket. When needed, I move into a short socket with a socket Allen on it. I also have round head socket, 3/8 drive. I move over to the other side. I have a long, extended Allen wrench socket to get into deep spots, such as the starter bolts and the inner primary. When it really gets difficult, I have the same sockets with the round head on it, so I can change angle and reach the proper torque and tightness for the bolt. Never Seez. This is a cup that I have that I pour the Never Seez in. This is probably the most important thing I have in my toolbox for assembling nuts and bolts from final assembly to the mock-up. That you'll see me using this the whole time. It's very important that you locate never cease. Other than that, the most basic kit we'll have out is a set of Bondurus Allen wrenches, which are the best ones you can buy, with the round head lowers. Underneath my cart, I have a standard cheapy scissor jack, which I raise and lower the back of the chassis with on assembly. I have a large watch screwdriver that I work on Rolexes with, a brass hammer, and a plastic mallet. Half-inch drive air ratchet. Maybe once or twice you'll see me use that during assembly on a particular nut. Other than that, your basic garage tools are installed in my cart. Now let's move on to the rolling chassis. Okay, here we go. We're going to start building this custom motorcycle. The first stage is we're going to mock it. Now we've got our parts purchased, which are featuring Pro One products on this motorcycle. So at this point, we've unpacked these items and did a small sub-assembly of a kit, fork stop kit, which we've installed on top of the tree. And the main stem, these were all packed separately in boxes. When we purchased the fork stop kit, we got a kit that comes with cups, bearings, stop retainer for this chassis, and to stop the turning of the upper fork clamp. So now we'll move from here. We're going to install these, and then we're going to move over and install a set of handlebars. So the second feature is we're going to use our bushings, our washers, typical bolts. These are mock-up bolts. These are not chrome bolts that will be permanently installed. We're going to install the handlebars, the upper fork clamps, then we'll move to the forks and the front wheel. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to knock the bearing cups into the frame. Now this frame's been notched for the pin in the cup, for the lower cup, which houses the stop for the fork, so the trees don't come around and hit the gas tank. So the first thing we're going to do, make sure we're clean in this area. A little bit of never sees. These will be removed. Set the cup up, and we're going to hit it in. It's a press fit, so you need a good brass hammer. I've used this punch that I've turned down on the lathe for many years to knock them in. Now, if you look closely, the bearing races are already installed in the cups. Some cups that you purchase will have bearing races installed, others will not. What you have to do is determine what product you buy and the parts that you receive with it. Something to look for when you first buy. So this would be a basic procedure to knock it in. I've got my pin lined up and over. If you don't have this punch, then get one of these. It's called an Oki punch. And what it is an oak block and a hammer, and you can hear it ting when it seats. Now I'm going to flip it over and install the top cup. Repeat the same procedure. We've already put our never sees in. Start your cup, block, and seat. Then we'll install the upper tree. Okay, what we've done is installed the cups on the ground off the rack in order to support the frame solidly to knock them in straight. Now what we're going to do is install a dust cover which protects the bearing but also acts as a shim right now. the tapered bearing. These particular trees will drop in from the top. Now, if you also noticed, I taped a paper towel onto the frame. Reason being is you want to lay this over at this point, especially when you're by yourself, to protect the chrome. If you don't, you just christened your brand new Custom. Okay, now we'll insert the lower tapered bearing. We've never seized the taper head bolt for the bottom. And we'll install the lower fork clamp. There's no need for Loctite or torquing this bolt at this time. We're going to remove all these products after we've mocked the bike and made sure that everything fits in the bodywork. So hand tight is fine. Hold this, rotate over, and you've got a snug fit that you can adjust. You want to be able to move these a little bit at this point. Fork stop is built in to the cup, and we're done up here. From here, basically what we're going to do is slide our forks in, our front wheel, and our axle. One more thing we're going to install before the front end is that we're going to install the handlebars basically at this point. Then we'll slide the tubes in. Never seize the bolts. Now sometimes you have to figure out a sequence which works for you, because there's only two hands here. You pop the nylon bushings in, which, by the way, these are all Pro One featured products. They can be reached through their catalog or Southwest Custom Cycles. Okay. 2 chrome washers on the top. Now, if you'll notice, I've installed the center sleeves so it will not over compress the bushing on the bolts already. Take it to the tightening side of the fork stop. Grab a wrench and just snug them up. Okay, we're featuring the Pro One billet lower leg front end. This comes pre-assembled from Pro One. The tube, the lower leg being billet and chrome, the axle going flush at the end of assembly on right and left hand side, and the factory slider tubes with the factory tops. Now at this point, there's no oil in the front end. Once again, we're in the mocking stage. We're going to make sure that everything fits. So let's move over to the frame and slide these through. Okay, before we get started, once again we're going through the never seize. At this point, install a small amount of never seize inside the chromed area of the lower clamp and inside the ID of the upper area. You can always wipe it out later. And what it's going to do is stop the scratches that you'll get sliding the fork in from the lower to the upper. When you slide it in, it's important that you remember not to twist the tube unless you absolutely have to get it to move. You want to go as straight in as possible. Always use never seize on the threads. We've got our cap assembly ready to go. Also, the right-hand leg that I'm installing is the one with the large hole and the pinch. This is going to take the axle through from the right to the left, which is standard on these custom motorcycles. Okay, at this point, we're going front end heavy, and we've got to be ready for that. You want to pay particular attention to the assembly, especially on these top bolts and the whole bike in general, because it's very easy to scratch the chrome. And what we're going to do is we're going to hand tighten the top nuts. And what I've got is a cheap socket. It's an 1 3/8" socket. And I've installed masking tape around the outer perimeter, enough to roll it in on the flat surface, and then smack it down on a flat piece of metal. Even at this point, I don't want to touch the top of the chrome. I'm going to stay above it. So I'll hold the socket, twist the tube. You can see that there's a gap in between the chrome and the socket. That'll keep a ring, scratch ring, from occurring on top of this. The last thing you want to do with expensive parts is scratch them. And if I scratch it, you're going to see it on video. Then we'll take a paper towel and wipe the tubes off, surrounding area. And we'll move to the front wheel and install the front axle, front wheel, and clamp it in the stand. Okay, what I've done now is an attempt to do this by myself. In the event that you have to do this by yourself, this is probably the best way to attempt it. If it fails, it fails. Otherwise, your neighbor, son, wife, friend, whoever you can get should help you lift this front end into the front wheel to slide the axle through. And once you reach this point, you'll be able to stabilize the chassis a lot easier. So what I've done is I've got a regular motorcycle ratchet strap. I've put it across the back of the frame behind this tube, because when I lift this chassis up, I want to be able to slide forward enough to get to the front wheel. I took my scissor jack, Basically got it set up. This particular scissor jack, I welded a nut on the end of this so I could use a socket with it. Pretty simple deal. And then just bring it up on top of the front motor mount. Now this is where you got to start being careful. The rigidity of the strap has to be just right. Now we've got our Pro One wheel assembled. We've got the rotor on this, but the rotor is not needed at this time to do a mock-up, so it can be on or off. These spacers were supplied by Pro One in their rolling chassis kit. They're already set up to center the tire and to set the front end in correctly. If you choose to buy other wheels and other products, you're going to have to build and shim and manufacture spacing and be able to calculate it in order to properly set up the front and rear wheel on your motorcycle. So this is a big advantage of buying a product, is when the spacers are set up for the front end. So we got to find the balance point. And like I said, this is much easier when your neighbor's wife is helping you. And then later on in the video, you'll actually see a tool assistant possibly come in and help me out on final assembly. But for mock-up, I'm trying to teach you how to do it yourself. You spend a lot of money on these parts, and there's a lot of work and quality put into them. So when you even assemble a mock-up, take your time. These parts will try to get the best of you. I've installed Never Sees on the slide-through area of the front axle. That'll go through the bearings, in and out, much easier. I'm a little off still. Okay, one guy, basic things, difficult operation. That'll get that on from here. We'll install, once again, Never Seized, axle nut, and snug only. Nice, clean, tapered fit. There's no need to pinch the other side and permanently tighten up the front axle at this point. The Pro One wheel, the pulley assembly, it comes with the bolts. The rear pulley was installed on here previously to what we're filming right now. So what we've done is we've installed the rear hub. These are 7/16 bolts, which will give you torque specs on the 7/16 bolts, which should be torqued down and permanently locked with 271. On the opposite side of the wheel, matching rotor, has been the same way. These are button heads. Sometimes it's impossible to put a restraint system on these coming loose, so it's important that 271 Loctite and their minimum torque values are met. If you over torque them, the heads will start stripping out and it'll stand out like a country mile. So you want to be careful on installation of these with Loctite and a torque wrench. This has already been previously assembled. The tire's been previously mounted. At this point it has, everything's balanced, mounted, the tire has air in it, the pulley is on, and the rotor. For the Pro Quad, it gets a little different on assembling the structure of the wheel. What we're actually going to do is we have wheel spacers that are supplied, and the wheel spacer, quote unquote, at this time I'm not even sure which side it goes in. I'm almost positive it goes over here. We'll have to check it out. We've got our hub assembly pre-assembled, and we're going to locate. Yes, it does. I could tell by the distance in between the bracket and the rotor. Okay, I've located the long spacer for the rear wheel, which comes with the rolling chassis and the Pro One kit. It's nice because all the spacing's set up in the rear wheel. All I have to do is insert it into the quad link chassis. It saves a big amount of time and a lot of big headaches, especially if you don't have a machine shop. Okay, what I've done here is I've got the front bolts in the shock on the frame on both right and left hand side. I've installed the 2 pivot bolts in the lower swing arm of the quad link. These are not tightened up, they're just finger tight with never sees. I've placed 2 pieces of duct tape at the back right here for chrome protection. And I've already showed you the pre-assembled unit here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install, non-permanently also, one rear hub, okay, that would be a problem. Do I want to hit it or do I want to check it out? I want to check it out. Everything's fine on the thread. It's got to be me. Okay, there it went. This is a critical tight sleeve fit. If I would have hit it, I would have burred the chrome, messed up the threads. Patience prevailed on that. That's why I wanted to show you and stick with it on the assembly. If something gives me a problem, you may see the camera still running and I'll get by the problem. Just, you won't see it running if I grab a hammer, because usually the guys turn around and they run too if I get really pissed. But that was our first little problem that we overcame by patience. This second hub